You know that feeling, that sense you get sometimes when you're deep in thought, wrestling with these big abstract ideas, philosophy, logic, what's right, what's wrong.
Yeah, it feels purely intellectual, detached almost.
Exactly. You build these frameworks, you theorize, you maybe debate them in your head or, with friends, and it feels kind of safe, right? Like it's just mental gymnastics
Until it isn't.
until suddenly and sometimes brutally, those very ideas collide, just head on, with messy, horrifying reality.
And it shatters everything. Not just what you thought about the world, but maybe more terrifyingly, what you thought about yourself.
That feeling, that destabilizing, terrifying impact, that's exactly where we're diving today.
It really is. This deep dive takes us back into, well, the dense, complex, but incredibly rewarding world of Fyodor Dostoevsky's The Brothers Karamazov.
And we're not trying to tackle the whole epic novel today, obviously.
No, no. We're zooming in, focusing on some incredibly intense, pivotal moments for one of the main characters, Ivan Karamazov. These aren't just plot points. They're like psychological and philosophical earthquakes for him.
Okay, and the specific material for this exploration comes from a listener, right? Someone who shared their notes.
That's right. A listener generously shared some really detailed notes and analysis from, it sounds like a deep reading or maybe a discussion group focused on the book. And these notes build on points we might have touched on before when talking about the Karamazovs.
So think of it as us using these passages and the listener's insights to really unpack the profound, sometimes pretty disturbing implications.
Yeah, our mission here is to take these key scenes, there's this fraught final confrontation, and then a deeply unsettling visitation, and really extract the psychological and philosophical nuggets Dostoevsky embeds in them.
Using the listener's analysis as a guide.
Exactly. We want to understand why these specific moments push Ivan, well, right to the absolute brink of his sanity. And what do they reveal about huge themes like guilt, responsibility, the human condition, and maybe the terrifying consequences of our own thoughts?
And for you, listening right now, why should this matter? Why dive deep into the torment of some 19th century fictional guy?
Because Ivan's struggle, I think, touches on something really universal. It's about the power and sometimes the danger of ideas, the weight of our own thoughts.
Right, the messy, often hidden consequences of what we believe or champion intellectually.
And that unsettling possibility that parts of ourselves, the parts we try to ignore or suppress, can, come back to haunt us in the most vivid, terrifying ways.
It's a deep dive into the self, really, and its relationship to belief and action.
So let's get into it, starting with that third, and as it turns out, final confrontation between Ivan and Smerdikov.
Okay, setting the scene. Ivan arrives at Smerdykov's house. And the atmosphere, even before words are exchanged, it's thick with dread.
It really is. Dostoevsky is such a master at this, using the setting to mirror the internal state. And our listeners' notes really highlight this. It's gloomy outside, it's dark, there's heavy snow falling.
It's not just window dressing.
Not at all. It feels like heavy foreshadowing, doesn't it? Like the weather itself is signaling that something terrible, something deeply significant is about to happen. It mirrors the weight pressing down on Ivan himself.
And the state of the characters, they're not exactly relaxed.
Far from it. Smerdikov, for one, isn't physically well. He's only recently back from the hospital after an epileptic fit. So he's weakened, maybe vulnerable physically. But, as we'll see, mentally, he's sharp. Very sharp.
And Ivan, he sounds like he's in an even worse state, but internally.
Yeah, the notes describe him as being in this state of intense internal turmoil. It's not just anxiety. It's like a full-blown battle raging inside him.
Between his logic and
Yeah.
his feelings.
Pretty much. The carefully constructed edifice of his logic, his intellect, his critical thinking, it's crashing violently against his raw emotions and, crucially, his conscience. He's not thinking clearly. He's tearing himself apart.
And this isn't their first chat since the murder.
No, that's important. The notes emphasize this is their third meeting since Smerdikov got out of the hospital, and it's explicitly called their last meeting. So the stakes feel incredibly high.
For Ivan finding the truth, and also for his brother Dmitri's fate.
Absolutely. So what drives Ivan to Smerdikov's door this time, in this state?
It sounds like a compulsion almost.
It is. He's driven by this growing suspicion, this gnawing inner need he just can't suppress anymore. He has to confirm Smerdikov's role in their father, Fyodor Pavlovich's murder.
And he's not knocking politely.
No, the notes mention him pounding on the door. Urgently. He's past social niceties. He's desperate for the truth, however awful it might be.
He gets inside. Dark room, dark weather. And the confrontation begins.
And Smerdykov's initial reaction is just classic Smerdyakov. Denial and deflection.
He laughs, doesn't he?
He initially laughs, yeah. A nervous laugh, cynical, hard to say. But he flat out denies it. I didn't do it. Why would I? What would I gain?
Using the official story as a shield?
Exactly. He points out that all the proof, all the circumstantial evidence, it points straight at Dmitri. The police think Dmitri did it. The town thinks Dmitri did it. Why confess now?
He's using the external facts against Ivan's internal gut feeling.
Right. And he brings up his alibi, Martha, Grigori's wife, who basically raised him, claims he was in the room next to hers having his fit the night of the murder, and Martha backed him up.
Sounds plausible on the surface, designed to shut Ivan down.
It does. He says something like, I was lying there with my fit. If I'd done the murder, I wouldn't have been in that room.
But Ivan, even in his internal chaos, he's still fundamentally logical, isn't he? He hears the story, the alibi, the evidence against Dmitri, but something doesn't add up for him.
Yeah, his mind is relentlessly piecing things together. He doesn't back down. He keeps repeating the accusation, challenging him directly. I think you did the killing, Smerdyakov.
And there's a specific logical point Ivan makes, right? Something the notes highlight.
Yes, this is key. It's simple, but devastating to Smerdyakov's story. The official version, and even Dmitri's own account, suggests Dmitri came in through the window of Fyodor's room. That's the established route.
Okay.
But Ivan asks the crucial question. If Dmitri used the window, who opened the back door? Ivan suspects the real killer used that door. Maybe let Dmitri in, maybe acted alone.
That inconsistency, that gap in the official story.
Exactly. That's what fuels Ivan's certainty. His logic, even amidst the turmoil, locks onto this critical detail.
So despite all the denials, the alibi, the evidence pointing elsewhere, Ivan just keeps pressing him based on this deduction.
He does. And the conversation, the argument, it goes on for a while. The tension must be unbearable. And finally, after this long struggle, Ivan breaks him.
Smerdyakov confesses.
He confesses. He admits he committed the murder.
Wow, that moment. Confirmation of his worst fears. The truth laid bare. But okay, here's the big question the listener's notes apparently focus on. Why does Smerdyakov confess? Especially to Ivan. The evidence points to Dmitri. He has an alibi. Why tell Ivan anything?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And the notes suggest two main reasons, and they're deeply connected, showing the psychological state of both men. First, Smerdyakov himself felt overwhelming guilt. It was, quote, eating away at him. He wasn't just cold. The act weighed on him.
Okay, so guilt was part of it for Smerdyakov.
But the second reason is the kicker. Ivan also felt consuming guilt. This same guilt was continuously eating away at Ivan too. Smerdyakov sees this in Ivan, recognizes it.
So Smerdyakov confesses partly because the pressure was too much for him alone, and because he sees Ivan shares that burden. He's forcing Ivan to face their shared guilt.
Precisely. It's like a shared burden, and Smerdyakov is dragging it out into the open between them. And then, boom! The moment he gets the confession out, Smerdyakov does this stunning reversal. He turns the tables completely. He tells Ivan, basically, you shouldn't be talking about my guilt, because you are the real murderer.
Whoa, the man who physically did the killing accuses the intellectual.
And his reasoning is chillingly logical from his twisted perspective. It connects directly back to Ivan's own ideas. Smerdyakov says, point blank, that Ivan provided the idea, the philosophical justification.
He brings up the everything is permitted idea.
Explicitly, he links it right back to that famous pivotal discussion earlier in the book, where Ivan presented his theory to Father Zosima and the others. Without God, everything is permitted.
The abstract concept that Ivan was just exploring intellectually.
Yes. Smerdyakov claims Ivan put that very idea into his head. That he, Smerdyakov, just executed the act based on that premise. He tells Ivan straight up, if you hadn't planted that idea, if you hadn't created the intellectual space where patricide was permissible, I wouldn't have done it.
So he says,
he delivers that devastating line. You put the idea in my head. The real murderer is you. We are both murderers. He refuses to carry the guilt alone. He paints Ivan as the intellectual author, making him equally, if not more, responsible.
How does Ivan react to that? The man of logic, usually so composed, having his own words thrown back at him as the cause of murder.
He falls apart. As Smerdyakov starts mocking him, almost savoring Ivan's breakdown. He points out the physical signs, Ivan's trembling hands, his legs shaking, his pale face, the fear, the complete loss of his usual arrogant composure.
He taunts him.
Oh, yeah, with the ultimate jab at his former intellectual self. What happened to you, Ivan? Did you start believing in God?
Wow, it's the perfect contrast, isn't it? Ivan, the detached intellectual, the atheist collapsing emotionally because his own theory has become horrifyingly real.
Exactly. Smerdyakov twists the knife even deeper, mocking Ivan's previous intellectual swagger, calling his big ideas just avabazi, basically hot air. Where's your logic now? Where's your atheism? He sneers.
Like, your ideas were fine in theory, but look what happened when they actually touched the real world.
Precisely. Smerdyakov says something like, you were fine when it was all talk, but now that your ideas have utarke ai come down into life, become real through this horrific act, your grand theories have crumbled. And he seems to relish seeing Ivan stripped bare, seeing the raw emotional man under the intellectual armor.
So Smerdyakov, the lackey, the one supposedly looked down upon, becomes Ivan's judge, using Ivan's own philosophy against him.
In this profoundly disturbing way, yes. It's a total inversion of their usual dynamic. And then, just to drive home the reality of the act itself, Smerdyakov gives him the physical proof. Opens a drawer, pulls out the 3,000 rubles Fyodor had saved. The money supposedly stolen the night of the murder, still wrapped in the envelope.
The concrete evidence Ivan needed, right alongside the verbal confession.
Yes. Ivan sees it, and it confirms the physical reality.
Yeah.
Smerdyakov did it. Now Ivan has the confession and the money.
So what's his plan now? Faced with the truth, the evidence, and this horrifying accusation against himself.
Ivan declares his intention. He'll take the money, the evidence, to court the very next day. He'll testify against Smerdyakov. And, crucially, he says he'll also admit his own guilt, acknowledge his part in it all, because the guilt is eating him alive.
He wants to expose Smerdyakov and maybe find some kind of cleansing by confessing his own intellectual role.
That seems to be the idea, a desperate bid for truth and maybe some kind of personal reckoning.
But Smerdyakov isn't going to just let that happen, is he? After relishing Ivan's breakdown, he snaps back to calculation.
Oh, immediately. He laughs again, utterly confident. He tells Ivan, go ahead, tell the court, I'll just deny everything.
Deny the confession?
Everything. He'll say Ivan is lying, that Ivan had the money all along and is just trying to protect his brother Dmitri by framing him, Smerdyakov.
And in the eyes of a court, that might actually sound plausible.
Devastatingly plausible. Because there's no proof of the confession, right? It's just Ivan's word against Smerdyakov's calm denial. And who's going to believe Ivan, who by this point seems half mad over Smerdyakov?
So Smerdyakov highlights this awful gap between internal truth and external proof.
Exactly. He makes this crucial point. He tells Ivan something like, shout it outside, no one will listen. The world outside runs on logic. He means the logic of evidence, alibis, what can be proven. There's no external proof for Ivan's story about the confession or the philosophical motive.
But Smerdyakov admits Ivan knows the inner truth.
Yes, he adds that Ivan's conscience knows the truth. Your conscience knows the real murderer is you. He acknowledges the internal reality but dismisses its power in the external world of courts and public opinion.
He traps Ivan perfectly. Ivan knows the truth, has the physical evidence of the act, but can't effectively use it without Smerdyakov, who knows exactly how to play the system.
It leaves Ivan in this agonizing bind. He knows, the reader knows, but the path to legal justice for Dmitri is suddenly incredibly murky, relying entirely on the testimony of a tormented man against a likely very convincing denial.
How does this final explosive encounter end?
Ivan is just consumed by rage, emotion boiling over. He's shouting at Smerdyakov, but Smerdyakov stays unnervingly calm, keeps mocking him, basically saying, go on, go to court.
Knowing how hard it will be for Ivan.
Fully knowing. And as Ivan leaves, furious, trembling, Smerdyakov calls out this final chilling line that they won't meet again. A clear hint at his own plan for suicide.
And Ivan's last words to him.
A threat born of pure fury and helplessness. He shouts back that the only reason he hasn't killed Smerdyakov right then and there is because he needs him alive for court tomorrow. Otherwise, he would have killed him for everything he said, the confession, the accusation, turning Ivan's own ideas into this horror.
What a scene. The implications are just huge.
Oh, absolutely. The power of ideas getting out of control, that's central. Ivan's abstract thought, without God, everything is permitted, becomes Smerdyakov's concrete justification for murder. It really shows how dangerous intellectual detachment can be when it hits the real world.
And the question of guilt. It's so tangled. The notes emphasize this, right? Who is more guilty? The one who thinks the destructive idea or the one who acts on it?
Dostoevsky forces you to grapple with that. Smerdyakov points the finger at Ivan. And Ivan's own overwhelming guilt suggests a part of him agrees. It makes you think about the weight of our thoughts, their potential influence.
Smerdyakov isn't just a simple villain here. He's like a distorted mirror.
Exactly. A twisted mirror reflecting Ivan's own suppressed ideas, his own potential for darkness back at him in this horrifying, undeniable way. He's the grotesque consequence of Ivan's philosophy made flesh.
And Smerdyakov's cynicism about external logic, the court's needing proof versus the internal truth of conscience, that raises big questions about justice itself.
Can real justice capture the complexity of intention, influence, the interplay between ideas and actions? Smerdyakov suggests maybe not.
It must be profoundly disturbing for Ivan and for you reading it, to see someone weaponize your own intellectual framework against you like that.
To use your own logic to condemn you.
Yeah.
This meeting leaves Ivan utterly shattered. His internal world is just in free fall.
And that free fall, that internal chaos, it spills out immediately, doesn't it, in the next section?
Yes, straight away. Even leaves Smerdyakov's steps back into that blizzard, the darkness. And the listener's notes really focus on how his physical and mental state just plummets as he walks home.
He feels strange, disoriented.
Yeah, his limbs feel wrong, disconnected. He gets this growing, terrifying certainty that he's going to start hallucinating, that things that aren't there are about to appear. He's vividly aware of his mind fracturing.
He's watching himself go mad.
Exactly. And he asks himself that question, am I going mad? He wonders if you can actually observe your own descent. It's Dostoevsky exploring the state of self-awareness during mental collapse, which, as the source notes, is quite a profound psychological question for the time.
He manages to get home, sends the maid away, asks for tea.
And then he lies down on the sofa in his dark room. Darkness outside, darkness inside. But he doesn't close his eyes. He stares intently at a specific corner of the room, waiting, expecting something, almost inviting it.
And it appears.
An image forms in the corner.
The devil.
But not the devil you might expect from literature or art. The notes make a point about this, right?
A crucial point. You think of Milton's Lucifer, grand, defiant. Or Goethe's Mephistopheles, cunning, maybe with horns and a tail, meant to be terrifying.
Dostoevsky's devil isn't like that.
Not at all, according to the source. He appears like an old-fashioned gentleman. A suit, maybe a bit worn, a bit shabby. But polite. Soft-spoken, gentle voice, not scary almost. Mundane. Annoyingly ordinary, perhaps.
The opposite of the Prince of Darkness stereotype, completely. And Ivan's first reaction isn't terror, it's doubt. Is this real? Is it just my imagination? A hallucination from fever, stress. He's still trying to apply logic, even now.
It's incredible Dostoevsky was writing this, depicting hallucinations, externalized inner conflict, diving into the subconscious, the guilt, the thoughts taking on a life of their own, before psychology really had the language for it.
The source pauses on this too, and it's worth emphasizing. Through sheer artistic insight, Dostoevsky was exploring the deep psyche, mapping the mind's vulnerabilities, its hidden torments, how it can turn on itself under pressure. He was charting territory that psychology would later try to map scientifically. It's quite remarkable.
So this strange, polite devil, what does he say to Ivan? What happens in this conversation, this hallucination?
The dialogue is key. First thing the devil does, he starts mocking Ivan's guilt, the very thing destroying him, sarcastically assures Ivan he didn't commit the murder. Insists Smerdyakov was just simple-minded, man-booty, the notes say, dull-witted, someone who totally misunderstood Ivan's sophisticated logic about everything is permitted.
So the devil is telling Ivan to just stick to his logic, don't worry about the mess.
Exactly. Like, keep your intellectual distance, don't be bothered by this unfortunate outcome.
So the devil is like the voice of Ivan's own intellectual pride, twisted into a taunt.
Precisely. The notes highlight this. This devil isn't some separate tempter. He is Ivan's subconscious. His externalized guilt, his inner torment, his own radical ideas thrown back at him. The devil is Ivan's conflict made visible, audible, challenging him with sarcastic jabs. It's psychological warfare waged by Ivan against himself.
That's terrifying. Your own guilt becoming a separate voice tormenting you with your own logic.
It really is. And then the conversation gets even weirder. Second big point. The devil claims he's fundamentally good, even praises God.
Wait, what? The devil claims he's good. How?
He tells Ivan this story. Claims he was there at the crucifixion, saw Christ forgive one of the thieves, promise him paradise. An incredible act of divine mercy.
Okay.
And the devil says, witnessing this, he genuinely wanted to praise God. He felt compelled to shout, "Praise be to the divine."
But he couldn't because
Right.
he's the devil.
Says he couldn't, because he's forced to maintain his role, the battle, the conflict with the divine. His function requires opposition. If he praised God, joined the divine side, the fundamental conflict between good and evil would end.
And why is that conflict necessary, according to the devil?
This is his core argument, and it's profoundly cynical. He says without that conflict, existence would become utterly boring, dull, stagnant, meaningless.
Hmm.
People, he claims, need drama, ups and downs.
Like the dance of dopamine the notes mentioned? That sounds almost modern.
It does, doesn't it? He argues people sometimes crave drama, excitement, change more than simple truth or peace, more than the divine even.
So he's saying evil, conflict, suffering, they're necessary to keep life interesting, to give it spice.
That's his twisted logic. His role provides the dynamism, happiness, sadness, solitude, company, asceticism, materialism. People desire this constant flux more than static peace. Therefore he, the devil, the principle of opposition, is necessary to make existence feel alive, meaningful. Interesting. It's a deeply unsettling argument about human nature maybe craving chaos.
He's justifying himself by appealing to our darker, restless side.
Exactly. And it resonates with Ivan's own restlessness, his intellectual challenges to order. Then there's a third point, more illustrative than grandly philosophical. He mentions witnessing a confession.
Okay.
A young woman confesses a physical relationship. The priest seems to accept it, forgive her. But the devil notices a shift, a different light in the priest's eyes. They become lustful.
Seeing through the holy facade.
Yes, the devil's conclusion. Holy men falter. Even the dedicated, the supposedly pure, have sin lurking within, a devil in their hearts. It's an example of universal imperfection, maybe implying the devil is internal to everyone.
And the fourth point loops back to Ivan's big ideas.
Right back. The devil talks about radical plans to create a new world, a new human species, because the current one is flawed, resistant to perfection. Ideas Ivan himself has toyed with.
Revolutionary ideas, maybe?
Could be. But the devil counters. It's all unnecessary. Ivan's own idea is enough. Just remove God. Establish without God, everything is permitted. And boom, humanity becomes new, spontaneously.
How does this new man behave, according to the devil?
Starkly. No God means no absolute morality, no afterlife, no judgment. So this new man lives intensely now, here and now, loves deeply, because this life is all there is, and feels free to do whatever they want. Human laws are relative, changeable, no true compass. They seize every desire, every experience, live life to the absolute fullest because nothing else matters.
And he connects this directly back to the murder again.
Constantly. The devil keeps using Ivan's own ideas to torture him about the murder. Reminds him this new man, philosophy was his logic. So, yeah, his father died, but hey, it's not Ivan's fault, logically speaking. He was just being critical, right?
Yeah.
Which the world needs.
The sarcasm is just dripping.
Totally. He relentlessly prods Ivan, contrasting the theory of the new man with Smerdykov's real-world horror, reinforcing that Ivan's idea caused it, even while mockingly urging him, keep applying your logic.
So the devil is the perfect embodiment of Ivan's internal war. The intellectual part that created these ideas versus the moral, emotional part recoiling from the consequences.
The psychological torture session, Ivan's own mind, via this hallucination, holds him accountable for his own philosophy, proving its devastating potential by throwing Smerdykov's actions in his face. He's confronted by the logic and mocked for his very human reaction to it.
It must become unbearable for Ivan.
Completely. He's overcome. Fear, trembling, he can't take it. He yells at the devil, "Go away, get out of my sight."
And the figure vanishes.
Yes. Leaves Ivan alone again, utterly shaken. And in the aftermath, he throws a glass at the wall, maybe trying to reconnect with physical reality, or just pure frustration, rage, breakdown.
Looking deeper, the devil isn't just literal. He's symbolic of Ivan's subconscious, isn't he? His guilt, his doubts, his darkest conclusions made manifest.
Absolutely. And the philosophical arguments, necessity of evil, the new man, morality without God, these are Ivan's own intellectual battles externalized, amplified by his mental state.
It's just another stunning example of Dostoevsky's psychological depth, showing the mind hallucinating, externalizing conflict, turning on itself. Way ahead of his time.
And this encounter offers no comfort, no clarity. It shatters Ivan further. He can't dismiss the devil as purely external. It knows too much, sounds too much like him. It feels like a part of himself he can't escape.
And right after this intense internal battle, there's a sharp return to the outside world.
Exactly. The devil vanishes. Ivan's trembling, maybe throws the glass, and then, bam, urgent knocking at the door. Snaps him back, or tries to.
And given the storm, the time of night, a visitor is highly unusual.
Very. Ivan's still reeling from the hallucination, the debate with his own torment, the memory of the money at Smerdykov's. He's barely present.
He opens the door, and it's Alyosha.
And this is critical, as the notes describe it. It's not just Alyosha, it's Alyosha's state. He's agitated, sweating, Despite the cold, his face shows real fear.
Which is totally out of character for Alyosha.
Completely. He's the calm center, the spiritual rock, the hero figure often. Seeing him like this terrified immediately tells Ivan and tells us, the listener, that something truly awful, something significant and shocking has just happened in the external, real world.
His state is the first piece of terrible news.
You got it. And then Alyosha delivers the actual news.
Smerdyakov
has hanged himself. Alyosha found him dead by suicide.
Oh my God, the timing. Moments after Ivan's confrontation, his plan to go to court, and right after the devil's visit.
It's stunningly dramatic. An abrupt final end to Smerdyakov's story and a shattering blow to Ivan's plans.
Does the suicide confirm Smerdyakov's guilt? Like a final confession?
You can certainly read it that way, an ultimate confession through action. But it also throws Dmitri's case into chaos, doesn't it? The defense relied, partly, on proving Smerdyakov did it, and now the key witness, the perpetrator, he's gone.
And Ivan's plan to use Smerdyakov in court to expose the truth, maybe find some personal reckoning, that's instantly gone too.
Instantly dismantled. Smerdyakov's suicide feels like, well, maybe despair driven by guilt, or maybe a final cynical act to escape earthly justice and leave Ivan, the intellectual author, alone with his unbearable internal torment.
It completes that tragic chain. Ivan's idea, Smerdyakov's act, Ivan's guilt, Smerdyakov's confession fueled by shared guilt, his cynical plan for court, his despair, his suicide.
It's a devastating capstone. It just underscores how philosophy, psychology, external events, they're all tangled together in Dostoevsky, creating this feedback loop of guilt, responsibility, and torment.
So let's try and wrap up this incredibly intense journey we've taken, drawing on those listener notes.
Yeah.
We saw Ivan confront Smerdyakov, get the confession, only to be accused himself. You're the real murderer.
Saw the physical evidence, the money, but also Smerdyakov's chillingly cynical view that external justice doesn't care about internal truth or motive.
Then we plunged right into Ivan's fracturing mind. The hallucination of that polite, philosophical devil tormenting him with his own guilt, his own ideas, raising profound questions about good, evil, and life without God.
A devil born from Ivan's own subconscious conflict. And finally, that shocking snap back to reality. Alyosha's arrival, his uncharacteristic terror signaling the news Smerdyakov's suicide. A sudden, complicating end that leaves Ivan utterly alone with the weight of it all.
These moments really crank up the core themes of the book, don't they? The weight of ideas, the blurred lines of guilt and responsibility.
That brutal internal battle between logic and emotion, detachment and conscience. And the terrifying struggle with your own inner self, the parts you try to ignore.
And diving into this, using the listener's analysis, it feels relevant because it hits these timeless questions about human nature, morality, the consequences of thought, the hidden corners of our own minds. Questions that really resonate beyond the book.
They really do. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? If our deepest conflicts, our guilt, our buried ideas, can feel so real, can literally take shape and torment us from within, how well do any of us really know ourselves? How well do we understand the full landscape of our own minds?
Or maybe think about this. How responsible are we for the ideas we put out into the world, for the seeds we plant, even if we never intended them to grow into something monstrous, even if we never acted on them ourselves, something to definitely mull over?